If you're not familiar with transaction fees, in this chart, we're just looking at the USD value of all fees paid to miners, transaction validators, stakers, and or block producers that day. And this chart, it used to be more useful than it is today, but it does still, I think, provide value. One of the interesting things is that historically, whenever transaction fees spike, it has been representative of a significant high, right? You can see that that happened back in 2017. It happened over here in April of 2021, both of which ended up being significant highs. Now, in 2021, we ended up going and putting in a higher high later that year, about 6 months later or so. Now, what's interesting is we saw a spike back in May. And we're saying, look, guys, transaction fees have spiked. And everyone just saying, well, it's because of ordinals. And I'm not saying that's not true. I mean, it is true, right? I mean, it's not, the mania that we had in April or May of 2023 was nowhere near what it was in 2021 and 2017. But one of the things we said back then was that it could at least be leading into a cool off period where this could be a local top. And what's interesting is it actually occurred. If you look at the nature of transaction fees, right? Like, so if you look at this one in 2017, it spiked after the top was in. And then if you look at 2021, right, the spike occurred after the high was in. And then if you look at March or May, the spike occurred after the high was in. And then if you go look at it today, there was a spike coming just after this potential high. Now, it's hard to know if this is, the high for a while or not. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to believe it could be or it could not be. But the point is, if you only looked at this chart in a vacuum and you had no clue about, maybe the reason why transaction fees are spiking, sort of just pointing toward ordinals. If you had no reason, no narrative to go along with it, if you only showed me this chart, right, it shows that oftentimes there is a cool-off period. Now, a lot of people would point out that while it did cool off here in May of 2023, we were back to putting in new yearly highs by July, right? I mean, so what, right? But it at least did signal that there needed to be a cool-off period. Now, again, there's the halving in April. It's hard to know if we're going to get a move into that or not, or if the market will just front run it completely and everyone's waiting for something that's not actually going to happen in terms of price movements associated with positive news. But the point is that, we are looking at transaction fees spiking. And the only way that it could be a false signal. The other thing is that it, perhaps the high on transaction fees isn't in, right? And then it theoretically could go higher. I mean, it's already gone a lot higher than it went in 2021. So who's to say it couldn't continue to go higher from here and just continue this trend? So that's sort of caveat too. But I did just want to bring this chart to your attention. There's certainly a lot of charts out there that you can look at to sort of paint a more bullish picture, and a lot of people have done that. But I do want to, talk about all the different charts, and at least this one is saying, hey, there might need to be a cool-off period here sometime in the next few weeks. And if Bitcoin does push higher into the end of the year, it doesn't necessarily negate this. It could just mean that it's, being delayed by, another 2 to 3 weeks. But it is historically transaction fees spiking like this are a signal that at least a few, within a couple of months, it normally comes back down to earth, right? Not always immediately. And even in 2021, 6 months later, there was another high. But historically, after, a couple of months after these peaks, the market has at least experienced some type of significant cool-off period during that window. And there's a period coming up, I think, relatively soon, early to mid-January. About mid-January is often a sort of a unfavorable time for risk assets in election years. So do keep that in mind. So there are some signals that the market is getting overheated. And we'll see, if there's a push higher by Bitcoin or not going into the end of the year. The S&P continues to go up. I did just want to put this video out and say, look, this has been a good warning sign before. And there have been times where the market did go just a little bit higher, even after it topped. But in all cases, there was at least even if a very brief one, there was always a cool-off period sometime after the spike in transaction fees. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up.